welcome back to Wrist Check Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. And if things look a little different, it's because we're not in New York in our studio. We've traveled all the way to Atlanta, where we just held a watch meetup with our friend here, Giancarlo, founder of Atlanta Watch Society. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you. So we're going to get into some things, learn a little bit about you, your love and appreciation for horology. And we'll talk about this amazing watch group that you founded. But before we get into that, it's only right we have our honorary wrist check.
Yes, exactly.
So being that you're actually double wristing,
Which I don't normally do.
let's start. You pick one, and then we'll work around, and you'll come back and do the other one.
Okay, so this is an Aranot watch.
Aranot, okay.
It's a brand that uses, the brand from Denmark, and they use repurposed car paint, which is called Fordite, into their dials. So shout out to James Thompson and the folks, James Thompson from Black Badger.
Yeah.
He's one of the founders of the company, and I call this the Aranot because if you could see,
maybe
we'll do a little,
we'll
do a little zoom later. It's got a little egg on the dial there with with the paint. So wearing this, and then on this wrist is my pretty new, but new to me, discontinued AP dual time.
Nice. And you just recently acquired this there was a special occasion?
Correct. Yes, for my birthday.
Nice. Happy birthday.
It was my own birthday. It was my birthday gift to myself.
Yeah, that's how you get treat yourself.
Yeah, I had to.
Yes.
I know what you're wearing. What do you got in the wrist, Rashawn? You want to share?
Yeah. The usual suspect, the 5726 Paddock.
Nice.
It's, coming from a man that never repeats a watch, I am repeating this watch.
It's been the last few episodes now.
over and over and over. And if it was a dead horse, I continue to beat it. I've shared this on the show so many times. This watch is very special to me. I acquired it with the help of a friend that I call a brother. And
it's a really good friend.
Very good friend. We share a sentiment with this timepiece, from choosing the strap to acquiring the piece in general. And it's just one that won't leave my wrist.
That strap is awesome.
Thank you.
And the strap is from where?
John Rousseau, green shark skin.
Beautiful.
Wanted to keep the aquatic theme.
Yeah, how did you guys arrive on deciding that you were going to use shark skin? You remember?
It was very funny.
Was that intentional before you got there, or were you just looking at skins?
We were looking at skins, and I was like, and it was just like very, very exotic to me because of course you hear of like stingray and gator, of course. Yeah. Or you'll see like ostrich, like all those kind of things. But I was like, shark skin, that just sounds nuts.
Especially for a diver, right?
Exactly. It was just like, it was so appropriate. I was like, shark skin, gotta do it. And it's gotta be green against like this like brown. It's so funny like how it can come off gray, it could come off brown, taupe, or whatever when it hits the light. And I was like, that against green is the hit.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful watch.
It's a beautiful watch.
I'm repeating a watch. This is actually, I think, only the second time I've worn this on the show. I too am wearing a Nautilus. Mine's is vintage. This is my favorite reference, the 3800 1AJ. I think I wear smaller sizes. I try to stay somewhere around 38, 39. This is a 37 and a half. And I'd been after this for some time. It popped up on Win Vintage, Eric's site.
Shout out to Eric.
Shout out to Eric and Charlie.
Yes.
And what's funny was I inquired about this piece, and I was like, hey, what's the deal with this? And he actually had consigned it to a retailer.
Oh.
And he was like, you're interested? I was like, I'm serious. Like, let's figure something out. So he brought it back in. And Eric consigns a lot of pieces himself. This has happened to be one of the few pieces that he actually owned. He bought this watch. And he bought it from the original family out in LA. Came with the extract. And it took about, I want to say the whole process took about probably about 8 weeks, and finally squared everything away. And he was like, "Watches in the mail," and it was like Christmas.
Literally, I remember when you were unboxing the watch too.
Yeah.
And you put it on the wrist, and I was like, man, this watch definitely like channels you. Like
That's Perri, man.
It's a Perri watch.
It is a Perri watch.
100%.
I love it.
A Perri watch. From the moment that you put it on, it was perfect. The champagne dial.
What I love about
solid.
it too is it's because it is a sports watch, but the two-tone is like very 90s. It's kind of my era. And I often wear a suit more often than I dress casual. And I can go
both ways.
Yeah, of course.
So that's really nice.
3800 also too is the best reference because there is, of course, this smaller case size, and then you have the jumbo.
Correct.
And of course, now with modern pattern, there is no like kind of sway.
No.
It just is what it is. And then they consider the smaller references a ladies' watch.
Yep.
Which I
Now
think
they
is
do for the modern pieces.
for modern
shouldn't,
pieces
yeah.
now, which I think is very unfair to
I agree.
I think it's very unfair.
Yeah. We actually know a gentleman who bought a ladies Nautilus. I think Max, who we had on the show, designer. He has his watch with Hublot, and I think he got the 7118 that was released last year with the sapphires.
Yeah.
It looks great on his wrist.
Yeah, it does.
So, getting into things, you, my friend, are a New Yorker.
Yes, I am.
And we've traveled all the way down south to link up with you.
Welcome to the Peach State.
Yeah, welcome to the Peach State.
Every street is Peach Street.
Peach Street. Don't think it's like Queens Boulevard. You go straight and you can find. No, it's the different streets. So.
Yeah. How did you wind up in Atlanta? What brought you here?
So it was work related.
Okay.
So a few years ago, right before the pandemic, work approached me about an opportunity to move south. And, love New York, born and raised in Queens.
Yep.
Lived in New Jersey with the wife and the kids once I got married. But, I traveled a lot for work.
Yeah.
And Atlanta was a place that I used to come to quite a bit.
Okay.
And the opportunity was a good one. Brought the wife down.
Yep.
Showed her homes, did the whole thing, and she fell in love. And as long as she was happy, and I was, we all know the saying, right? So,
She's happy, we're happy.
and it was a good opportunity for work too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how did you, what was your introduction to horology? Because, moving from New York where they're all, you got Red Bar, you got all this stuff.
Yeah.
You come here, you're kind of starting a new leaf, you bring the family down, but you're passionate about timepieces. I want to first start and talk about where did that passion come from?
So it came from my grandfather.
Okay.
From a very young age, I mentioned earlier, my mom is from Mexico, right? Those little Mexican,
Yeah, we had the little snacks.
the gancitos. Anybody that's Mexican, gancito. I gave him a gancito. So my grandfather, I used to go to Mexico every summer.
Okay.
And, I obviously spent a lot of time around him.
Yeah.
And I always admired him and always looked up to him. And I always remember his gold Omega constellation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which, I inherited.
Yeah. Nice.
So obviously that's where it started, right?
Yeah.
But why it's so special is that I could still remember moments in my life where I remember that shiny timepiece. Now, I didn't know what it was at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. I knew it was a watch, but I didn't know what brand it was. But I remember it shining in the sunlight and just remember seeing it on his wrist and he'd have a lot of friends over. So I remember his friends also. And it almost was, and my grandmother, she since passed last year, almost 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I tried to ask her, but unfortunately, she had already onset dementia. But they weren't watch meetups my grandfather was having, but they were hangouts with his friends in Mexico, like in his despacho. So it's like part of the house, like the den or like the office of the house. And they'd have like whiskey and just hang out and smoke cigars. And all of them had nice shiny timepieces on. Wow. So I'd always remember those moments. So that's really where it started. And then obviously over time, I started, going and buying my own Swatch watches.
Do you remember like the first watch that you got that like really did it for you when you realized, okay, I'm locked in?
It was a Swatch that I bought in Venice.
Okay.
With my parents, we did a family vacation when I was about 16, and I bought it with my own money too.
Wow.
Nice.
So it was something
So
special.
you felt really special
Correct,
about it.
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
I went into the Swatch boutique. My mom, had the bank account for me because, she had it all set up, and I saved up, and we went to this boutique and I bought this Swatch piece. I actually just found it recently.
Oh, wow.
I had actually lost it.
No way.
I had lost it for a while, and actually my mom found it back at the house, and it was nice to see it. So I got to get a new battery in it.
Wow. So this kind of like channels kind of our story and how we got into watches as well, which I find to be very, very consistent when it comes to collecting watches or even collecting stuff. I think if you come out of your own pocket and you buy it yourself, like this becomes like a real thing.
Yes.
So, when you think about like when you say like, hey, my mom set this bank account for me, or like, she had some money aside, or I saved some money aside and I actually came out of pocket to do this. I think, your friends, your family, everybody kind of gets on board because you're like, oh, he's actually really invested in this.
Yes.
Because I could tell you how many things that I've asked my mom for and she'd be like,
No.
listen, you're going to get over that in a month. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah,
so,
especially at that age.
Yeah.
Exactly. So like the fact that you found out at a young age what like you really enjoy, I think speaks to our listeners, definitely strikes a chord with me, and why we're able to kind of like, the reason why like Wrist Check Pod and, Atlanta Watch Society, like why it exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about that. Yeah.
100%.
That magic, that spark.
The spark.
So, what's interesting is, being in New York, we're really fortunate to have all of these amazing resources in terms of retailers, in terms of, that's where all the auction houses are. And there are a couple of, watch groups that have started and solidified. And, what's interesting is when you talk to people who are kind of like either curious about watches or just completely outside of removed from the culture, the idea of like a watch meetup is like the most foreign thing.
Correct.
To them. It's like,
Yeah, it's true.
what do you guys do? You guys meet up and talk about watches?
Somebody called us nerds last night. To somebody's wife.
Yeah.
In a nice way, but you called them nerds.
Did you have a community when you were in New York?
So yes and no.
Okay.
I had been invited to a few Red Bar events, and I had gone. Mentioned James Lambden earlier.
Yep.
So I had gone to a few events, but never consistently, just because at the time I wasn't even working in Manhattan anymore. So I was kind of traveling around a lot. So it was hard to get into the city. And I had built, friends really online.
Okay.
And actually I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you, Perri or Rashawn, but I spent some time also helping out with the Urban Gentry channel.
Oh, I
On
remember
YouTube.
that. Yeah.
So I was on some videos there. So I made friends from that community that, obviously helped start, like I started a Facebook group, a Facebook forum called the Daily Wristwatch Check.
Okay.
And then that really kind of started more of like building community, but not like getting together all the time, right? Really then like when the pandemic hit, everything got paused, right? And that's, like I said, when I moved.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So what's interesting is, the idea that you would go and create a community, be it online or wherever, I think is something that is really special and almost kind of, from my experience, exclusive to the watch community. In terms of collectors, we're the only people that I see consistently that like are looking to foster communities. Why was that important to you? What was the driving force behind you saying, I'm going to start a Facebook group. I'm going to start this website. I'm going to talk to people about watches and bring them into my forum.
I love to bring people together.
Okay.
That's something that I've always loved to do. And so for me, it's not a collector's community, but it's a fan club.
Okay.
So I started in New York City, the AC Milan Club of New York City. So that's a soccer team from Italy.
Yep.
Huge soccer team. And I'm a big AC Milan fan. Red and black glasses, red socks. There's always a little bit of red in my outfit.
Representing.
Always.
Yeah.
So because I started that group, a lot of what I did with that group, and I started the group back in 2010.
Okay.
Right? So a long time ago, 2010. But that was like when Twitter was really starting to take off. Instagram, I don't even know if Instagram was really.
It wasn't really like a thing yet.
Not yet, but it was Twitter.
Yeah.
So we had a bar that we used to go to, a few of us, and then I just started putting the events out on Twitter, and more people would come.
Wow.
And what was really cool is because Twitter's an international tool, right? People from Italy who would come to vacation in New York that wanted to watch AC Milan games would look on Twitter and they would find us because of the hashtags.
Yeah.
So it started building this community that wasn't just in New York, but it was international.
Oh, wow.
And then we were recognized by the soccer team as well, and we became an official fan club.
Oh, that's incredible.
So it was amazing, right? My dream come true.
Is the club still
Correct.
active?
Correct.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So I matured in the sense that, instead of now just being a fan club, I'm still a big soccer fan, but instead of still being like involved or like the president of that group, I said, let me mature myself and now start something when watches, something more adult. And not that that's not adult, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
Fan club has a certain name to it.
Sure.
Right?
No, that's awesome.
So you moved to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I think that the timing of this, you mentioned that this is all kind of like just during and post-COVID.
Correct.
Right. And I think back to that period, and it seemed like, at least for us, watch media started to explode, right? On YouTube, Instagram, all these places. And more people are just dialed in. That coupled with being pent up in their house all the time, it seemed like people were really itching to get out 100%. And engage one another again. Was this one of the factors in terms of you starting Atlanta Watch Society here?
1,000%.
Yeah.
And it was, I moved in August of 2020.
Okay.
We were supposed to move earlier, but the pandemic obviously put the brakes on that a bit. August of 2020, and things were already starting to open up down in Georgia. So people were starting to get together.
Okay.
So for me, I had a lot of watch friends in New York, right? Here, I didn't have any watch friends.
Yeah.
Right. I had a couple of guys that I worked with that liked watches, but nothing to the way we like them, right? So then I just took the idea of what I did with the soccer club.
Okay.
I said, I have a social media presence with my Instagram. I have those Facebook groups that I mentioned earlier that I'm either a member of or I'm an admin in, right? Or that I started. Let me put the word out there and see if it resonates. And it did.
Where was your first event?
Our first event was at Taffer's Tavern here in Alpharetta, Georgia.
Okay.
So not too far from here.
How many people showed up?
It was about 10 people.
That's good.
Wow.
So actually, the first unofficial event was actually in my basement.
Okay.
I call that unofficial, right? Wow. But yeah, it was in my basement, and it was with a few of the guys that I had gotten to know already.
Yeah. And those initial meetups, I mean, you guys have, I think the great thing that I've witnessed with Atlanta Watch Society is the programming that you guys work on. What were those first initial meetups like? Did you have a goal in mind? Was there some kind of structure that you were thinking about you were going to do? Or what was the essential, like, the first meetups kind of like?
Just really open, right? Like just anybody can come as long as you like watches. It doesn't matter what kind of watch you have. I mean, for me and all of us, right? We started somewhere, and even now I still take pride and joy in buying a G-Shock or a Seiko, right? I love it, So for me, it doesn't matter. So it's all about like inclusivity, and just making it a real comfortable place for people. Yeah. And just really embracing everybody that comes, right, with positivity.
Yeah, that inclusivity is such an important factor, I think, too, right, to really get people out, because especially if you're new to it, or maybe you're passionate about it, but you're not, quote unquote, collecting the big boy watches, it can be a little intimidating.
Yes.
And to open it up like that is such a great thing, because I think one of the things I witnessed last night is, and we talked about this a bit, right, when we talked about sort of what is the mission of a watch group or a collectors community and such, and having the opportunity to engage people, educate. I want you to talk a little bit about that in terms of the programming that you develop, because now it's really shaping out. You're partnering with brands, you're hosting watch events with other collector communities. How did you arrive there? What was the point where you're like, okay, we can really expand this thing now that we have people coming out?
I think it really just started when we realized that more and more people were coming. And our idea of just really making it an open and comfortable place really started to resonate. So this location is actually one of the reasons as well. Yeah. This clubhouse.
Yeah, you actually have hosted events here.
Correct.
Yeah.
Not so much with brands, but really just with the collectors. And I think this location, because we all know as a watch collector, when you go to an event, you know, and we're all New Yorkers.
Yeah, exactly.
In the back of our mind, we're like, you know, what's that guy looking at over there? Like, you know, you just never know, right? So like, you always want a comfortable space.
Yeah.
And if you give a collector a comfortable space, they'll continue to come and they'll tell their friends.
Yes.
And that's what started to happen when we did that here. So it wasn't so much a strategy on my part.
Okay.
It just was convenience because this location is something that's available to me, right? So, but then I started seeing a strategy where, okay, let's continue to do events here, just us. And then when the brands take notice, then we can, you know, obviously go to other places where they'll pay for security and things like that. And that's what's ended up happening.
When you partner with brands, what is sort of the goal there, right? Like I think sometimes people often think about when they go to like a collector's meet that it's, and there's nothing wrong, but it's an opportunity to like connect the brand solely for, you know, retail sales
ROI.
purposes.
Yeah.
But what do you think your community is getting out of these branded events?
Education.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. That's why, like when we had Eric Wind here,
Yeah.
you know, for me, it was so important because so many people in our community ask about vintage. So many people are scared of vintage.
Terrified, yeah.
Yes.
And who better than Eric Wind
I know.
to be the
Yes.
person?
He's the guy.
to
Yeah, he's the
educate
guy.
them, right?
He's
He's the
the
man.
guy.
And what I loved is that, you know, and we were so honored, he had just done that presentation at HSNY.
Yeah.
And then like a month later, he did it here for us.
was a good one, too.
It was, and we did it at the same space as last night.
Nice.
Which is like the perfect place to do something like that. So education is extremely important because I think so many collectors, not even collectors, so many people just starting out are so curious.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I love Ronaldo so much. And him you know, our friend Ronaldo, him talking about quartz and educating people that, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be automatic.
Yeah.
To be awesome, like
watch
to
is
be,
a
to be
watch is a
beautiful,
watch.
to be amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so, like for example, with Grand Seiko having Joe Kirk here a couple months ago, right? The education he gave on spring drive technology. So many people had no idea.
Yeah.
Some people think it's just quartz,
Yeah.
and it's not. We know that, but so education's a big part of it.
Yeah, you're creating these like really enriching experiences
Correct.
for people.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's the driving force and continue to get people to come out because watch meetups are awesome, but to just continually meet up, it's I think you can there's opportunity to like kind of lose people.
Yeah, of
So
course.
keeping things interesting, developing programming.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your collection. So you're double wristing today.
Yeah.
How many watches do you own?
So I had to consolidate for this piece a bit.
Okay.
For the dual time.
Sure.
But I have about 23, 24.
23 watches. 24
Yes.
watches. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
One of the questions that we often get from people who are either very curious about this passion and hobby or don't own as many watches, how do you get to enjoy all of that? This is something that we talk about often because this guy owns 50 watches.
50. Nice. That's a good question. I would say that, you know, obviously you wear multiple watches a day, you know, so, and it really goes on mood, how you're feeling, activity that you're going to perform that day.
Yeah.
Like I won't wear this, even though, you know, probably could sustain some hits, but I don't want it to sustain any hits with my kids coaching soccer, right? You know, I'll wear a G-Shock or I'll wear something like that. But, you know, it's all about like feeling, you know, and how you wake up in the day, you know, and how you feel and what you want to wear. And I kind of look over, see what I'm feeling that day and just put it on. And then if it changes later on in the day, I switch.
Yeah, so you're switching out multiple watches.
I do.
a day, yeah.
I do.
How do you consider yourself a collector? How do you feel about that word?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's a good question. I thought about that recently, and you know, I would say that I guess I am a collector. I mean, but I don't have a particular theme. I feel like a lot of collectors have a particular theme. Especially in our community, like watch collecting in specific, because I'm all over the place when it comes to what I like. Right, I enjoy some vintage watches. I enjoy more modern, sporty. Dress watches, you know, the only dress watch I really own is the watch that I inherited from my grandfather.
Okay.
Which is the Constellation that I mentioned. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, I think it's just I'm a varied collector. I think.
Do you find that perhaps are you? What I notice is, so for instance, the watches on your wrist, right? They aren't just like typical watches. Branding aside, obviously an AP is an AP, but you're wearing it's an asymmetrical design, that watch, right? It's like, it's not your traditional like dial layout.
Correct.
And then on the other hand, you got like this really trippy kind of like acid
Salvador Dali style, like painting.
you know, so if I were to take a guess, it kind of seems like I would assume you like things that are just a little like left.
Correct.
Like a little off.
A little off, a little more eccentric.
What was it about this piece? I can't remember, what's the name of this brand?
Aranot.
Aranot. How did you come across this brand? What was it about them that really got you?
So I've been following James Thompson, Black Badger, for a long time.
Okay.
I've always admired what he's done with the rings. And then when he went over to Aranot to kind of found the company with the gentleman's name is Anders as well in Denmark, I just watched the video about him talking about what they were going to do with the dials.
Okay.
And car paint.
Yeah.
And if anybody hasn't like done research, please do research. I don't want to do it a disservice, but it really is just repurposed old car paint from like the factory. And over years, it develops into this sort of, almost like a rock formation. And it develops these natural dials.
It's crazy.
Natural like formations. And then they obviously cut them into dials.
Yeah.
So for me, what really stood out for me is I've always liked the brand. And I was able to pick this particular one as mine because I really like that egg.
Yeah.
I love to eat eggs.
Yeah.
But also it looks like there's bacon on the left there too. So it's a good, so it's like a breakfast. It's a breakfast watch.
Yeah.
And it's just so eccentric. And one thing that I'll say about like my collecting that I didn't mention earlier is I love something that tells a story.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything that tells a story, because for us, especially in this community, if you could tell a story about something on your wrist, it just really holds so much more weight than anything else.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had a question. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna make a comment because as you speak about this timepiece and sustainability, I think there is a turn that's happening in the industry, and everybody like has this mission of sustainability. And to be honest, it is kind of like a ploy because with luxury goods, there is a level of sustainability that you have to kind of like put out there in order to actually make the profit, the product. Sorry. So you see a lot of companies, brands, etc., going on to the bandwagon of sustainability, and we're here talking about community. I kind of want to put the message out there that the same way that they're looking to incentivize sustainability, there needs to be an incentivization, if that's a word.
It is now.
I'm just making stuff up.
I like the way it sounds.
There needs to be like something that incentivizes community.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the questions that we spoke about on our panel last night was, how important is it for brands to see what Wrist Check Pod is doing, what Atlanta Watch Society is doing, what Official CP Time is doing, all of these groups and guys that are pushing the narrative and the agenda for us to propel this hobby, where can we kind of like stamp our flag and say like, listen, we're here, we're not going anywhere, we want to champion this thing, and we need the inclusivity.
Yeah, I mean, I think groups like Atlanta Watch Society is doing just that, right? Like the idea that, this is Atlanta Watch Society is, I'm sure you guys have maybe done things or events that have generated some income, but for the most part, this is passion.
Passion,
right? It's not making you any money.
No, none.
And I think the industry is in a really special place right now where you got people who are so passionate that are really coming along and doing the work for the brands.
Correct.
We're saying, hey, we're galvanizing the people. We'll deliver them to you. It's important that you engage with us. Here's why. You're going to get the opportunity to speak to people that you don't typically speak to. They're going to get an education out of it. And this really should, in theory, enrich the entire industry. And I think we're starting to see that, right? Like
1,000%.
You're seeing it at every level. You're seeing it in retailers, where now the stores are becoming more incredibly diverse and more reflective of what collectors today and have probably looked like for the last 20 or 30 years, maybe even longer.
Yeah.
Right? The idea that now brands, I think, are even engaging women in a totally different way, right? Coming to the realization that, like, A, you don't have to gender watches anymore. You don't have to have ladies' watches and men's watches. B, that they've been collecting.
Yeah.
And now you have the amplification of all of these voices, thanks to groups like yours and Al's. The thing with the brands and the education, and one of the things that we didn't get to talk about last night, and a reason why I appreciate you having that watch on your wrist, and it's funny because you have the AP as well. How do you educate or engage, I guess I want to say, people in your community, the importance of engaging what we call in the industry other brands, right? Like, I think so many of us get wrapped up in Patek, AP, Rolex. A lot of people don't want to look at anything else. And part of the education that, you've taken up along with other groups is like, hey guys, there are things outside of that. Fantastic, we love it. Mm-hmm. Why is that important to Atlanta Watch Society?
Well, it's important because we want the diversity. We don't want everybody just collecting Pateks, right? Yep. And we want people to be able to, look at other brands because we know everybody's got different price points, and some people always will, right? Yes. So it's nothing wrong with that. So we want to make sure that we make everybody feel comfortable. So we do sometimes like watch themes, like we'll have like a theme, like we'll do Seikos only.
Oh,
right. So like Seiko Saturday, which is already a hashtag, but we'll do things like that. We'll bring watches to our events. Let's say if it's a brand event, we'll try to be respectful to the brand, right? But if it's just us meeting up, like here, for example, everybody brings a good amount of their like collection in Wolf watch rolls and things like that, or in my Perry watch roll here.
Yeah,
my Wolf
shuttle.
Appreciate your purchase. Shot out there. Yeah. So we'll bring watches and try to bring a lot of diversity. We always try to tell people, especially people with bigger collections, to bring some of their more unique pieces.
Yeah.
So people learn more about these pieces that they never knew about, and encourage people to look elsewhere aside from just the Rolexes of the world.
I love that you're using diversity regarding watches too, right? Because I think the beautiful thing about these collector communities, and that sometimes people don't realize, is obviously diversity in audience is important.
Yeah.
But when we talk about diversity from a watch collecting perspective, we're also talking about diversity in collection.
Correct.
Yes. Right. And that's why, and that's what I get is the mission. You're educating
1,000%.
people on that, which is incredibly important, because when you create an atmosphere, it seems that you encourage diversity in collection, you're encouraging diversity in price point, what's accessible to people in different brackets. You're encouraging diversity in terms of watch knowledge, where you're at on your journey. And I think that's like the coolest thing that we even noticed last night, right? It's so many different people gathering together at different stages of their watch collecting journey. You talked about inheriting this piece from your grandfather. Mm-hmm. You got two boys.
Three.
Yeah,
well, the twins.
Okay. Really went for it there. You got three boys.
Three boys. Yeah.
You're oozing with passion for watches.
Yes.
It's part of your life. It's who you are. Is it resonating with them on some level yet?
Yes, and I'm sure their future wives will hate me for it. Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's such a big part of my life. And they just, obviously at the ages that they're at, 8 and the twins are 5, they're just so interested.
Yeah.
They see me taking wrist picks. So that's actually a funny thing. And this probably happens to anybody that has kids and is a watch collector. But Dad, stop taking pictures of your watches. Because like I'm starting to embarrass them a little bit. Like just like this random like stop and just trying to get a good picture with the good lighting. But that's obviously something that, they're picking up on. My oldest, I've already gifted him a few pieces. He's got a couple of G-Shocks.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
The first one I gave him was a Timex Ironman.
Tight. We were talking about those on another episode.
Because that was one of the first watches I had too.
Yeah, those are hot.
I love those. I love those. And it's a vintage one too. It's one of the ones from like the OG ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely resonating. And it's something that I try to explain to them that, especially with my grandfather's piece, it's something really special that can be passed on.
Yeah.
So we talk about, and I brought my son, my oldest, with me to when I got the call from from Mayors. here in Atlanta to get my my Submariner, I brought my oldest with me.
Nice.
And then when I got the call for the Daytona, I brought one of the twins.
Nice.
So now this
So it's
one
like
is going to
a
go
family affair.
Correct.
That's
It's-
cool.
I make it so because the legacy is so important to me that I make it a tradition. I make
Yeah.
it something that they'll always remember. That one day they'll do the same, and they'll have that piece, and they'll remember that they went with Dad to
They
pick it
went
up.
with Dad to pick this up.
Correct.
That's so cool. Is your wife into it at all?
She is.
Nice. That's always good.
That's
that helps.
very helpful.
Oh yeah, that
Very helpful.
100%.
Yeah, very helpful.
Might not help the pockets, but it helps.
It's true.
Yeah.
But it is helpful, definitely.
Wow.
That's awesome, man. What's next for you in terms of collecting? You just got the AP, so I get right now you might be like, okay, check
Yeah.
that box. Let me relax for a little bit and enjoy that. But where do you see? Where's your collection going next?
I think right now, like you said, yeah, definitely taking a little bit of a break. But I mean,
But we're always
we
looking.
always say that.
Yeah.
We always say that. But I think it's something, and I know this is a complicated watch. It's got complication, but something with another complication, a complication that I necessarily like an annual calendar,
Yeah.
Nice.
something like that, a perpetual calendar,
Yeah.
something like that, and more on the dress side.
Yeah.
Right? Because like I said earlier, I have a lot of sports watches, but the only dress watch I really have is my grandfather's Constellation.
Oh wow.
Right? And some people may not even consider that a dress watch. For me, it is. Right? So I think definitely going down that road, and maybe even something else vintage. So Eric, I'm talking to you. You know,
Eric, you're getting a lot of shout outs on this episode.
yeah. So yeah, something like that. Because there's one that's been in my eyes for a while. I've
Okay.
had it on my radar for a while. It's and it's not a dress watch, but it's a vintage piece. It's the Fat Lady Coke bezel.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So that the GMT Master. So I've always liked that watch. I like that particular reference because it's a little bit thicker, the case. So that's one definitely that's on the radar, and it's vintage too.
Yeah.
Wow.
We often get together and talk like watch reviews and things like that. Is there anything that you've seen lately that's really impressed you?
In reference to like YouTube and like.
Or just in terms of
Reviews?
like actual watches, like anything
Oh.
released from any brands that's actually really like left an impression on you.
There's so much.
Yeah.
But I would say that.
The last 2 years too, I feel like have been pretty exceptional for watch
Correct.
releases.
Yeah.
Correct. You know, I really like what Laurent Ferrier does.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, so am I. I mean,
That
so-
latest piece that they released,
Correct.
with like the blue kind of turquoise dial.
Yes,
fire.
it's breathtaking.
Yeah.
Right. So I really like what they're doing there, and you know, like I said, I've been really looking at a lot of dress watches. So going towards that area, even Chopard too. Like I think
Yeah,
Chopard.
don't you? You have an Alpine
Eagle.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So the Alpine Eagle, Chopard to me, you know, because they're a manufacturer of jewelry first, the care and the you know the good craftsmanship that went into creating that bracelet and the dial. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's
The dial is
breathtaking.
awesome. It's the best
Correct.
thing about it. Yeah.
And they're coming out with more and more, right? Alpine Eagles. They're really expanding that line. So Chopard definitely too. Yeah.
Cool. What's next for Atlanta Watch Society?
I think that, you know, for us, next steps are continuing to grow organically. We've grown so much that it's, you know, it's one of those things that we've had to, you know, kind of not, I don't want to say halt membership because
Okay.
we would never, I never wanted to like do that.
But you guys are growing.
But we are growing. So
Yeah.
we're doing like now, like with the events, we're doing RSVPs and we have to cut them off after a certain
Okay.
amount of people because
Yeah.
there's just too much of a demand. But I think next there's continuing to partner with brands, but also not forgetting to, forgetting our roots of just getting together, us, the collectors, without a brand.
Yeah.
Right? Because why I wanted to do the brand thing was for education purposes. Also, have brands take notice that Atlanta is a serious watch collecting city. But, you know, in this 1 year that because we've been around almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Actually, our anniversary is next month. So 2 years, you know, it was really the focus last year was focusing on, you know, education, brands taking notice, and, you know, I think for the future, it's going to be a little bit of that, but more of our roots.
That's awesome. Is there anything that you know? It's funny because we were talking to Al, and Al's got CP time, and one of Al's things is he helps people get watches.
Yes.
and happens to be really good at that. What are some of the stories that you guys have you know experienced in Atlanta Watch Society that you're really proud of, or just brought a lot of joy to you?
Really, honestly, it's just bringing so many different people together.
Yeah.
Who, honestly, I don't know if they would ever be in the same room together if it wasn't for this.
Watches have a thing to
hobby.
do that. It's so funny when you look around the room, you're like, where else would I meet all of these? Like,
No,
individuals?
it's true.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's extremely important. The fact that we've been able to bring so many different types of people, all ages, from different cultures, backgrounds, and just bring them together. And we've really created a family. Like if you talk to our members, we have a WhatsApp group, we have the Facebook group, but we're really close. We're really tight knit. We all hang out outside of the watch community too. So for me, like coming from New York, not having those friends that I had back up north, it really built like friendships for me, that I needed here.
It's incredible to hear that too, because it's like here you guys moved from a completely different state.
Yeah.
Probably don't know very many people here, and your passion led you to not only foster a community for yourself, but to connect so many different people, and really give you something that like you can hold on to that's yours. It sounds like.
Yes.
That
100%.
brings you a lot of joy.
I do want to ask, because Atlanta Watch Society, when you think of the title, is very specific, but are you guys looking to expand and maybe open chapters? Is that something that is expansion something that you guys are of course solely you, are you looking to kind of explore?
It's a great question, and the answer is yes.
Okay.
Very New York, very direct still, right?
Yeah.
No, but it's true. Yes, because I never thought, honestly, in the beginning, never thought that, right? But making more and more friends, talking to more and more brands, they're like, you need to, you've done something here. Like this is pretty cool. Like you need to talk to others and see if other places will do it. So, and actually I've had other cities reach out to me.
That's awesome.
And we're already actually, I can't reveal it yet, but there's one chapter that's already in the works outside of Atlanta. That's in a pretty big city in the US, which we're really excited about. And then there's another one that potentially might come on board. So now I got to figure out how I'm going to make the time for all this, right? Yeah. But it's fun, and those people are really serious about doing it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're hoping for, right? If we do it, if we do scale this, it has to be the right way.
Yeah.
It has to be with the intentions of diversity. It has to be with the intentions of, and excuse my language, no assholes.
Yeah.
Right? Like really just bringing people together for the right reasons, right?
Making sure it's a safe space.
Correct.
How are you vetting your collecting group? Because Al talked about it with Official CP Time last night. Or CQ, was saying, they never thought about the vetting process of bringing people on board. I think, of course, good people do bring good people. So
correct.
If you look at Al, and especially if you look at CQ, they are zero BS guys.
Correct.
You're not coming to watch me and
Queens, New York over there too.
No, 100%. It's just not happening. So the vetting process probably isn't one that you have to worry about, because you bring such, great energy and all those kind of things, and you attract the right people. But is there a point where you have to say, maybe we're not looking for this. This is kind of the trajectory that we're on.
It's tough. I mean, I always think about it. When, you just have to be careful too, right? You don't know everybody, right? And we don't have a background check process.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? About checking on making sure these people are real, or they're not going to try to do harm to the community.
Yeah.
So, it takes, before you come to an event, right? It takes a few months, not a few months, but a few interactions before we bring you into the community, right? But there's no we have an application on our website, but it's not an application process. There's no interview.
Yeah.
We want to be as open as possible too, right? So the last thing I want is to be closed off and have anybody feel that we're excluding them. If anything now, and people probably watching may say, we're behind on getting to those applications because there's so much interest, right? But, I guess New York City instincts, like we talked about earlier, just feeling people out, making sure they're not bots, right? Obviously, or something kind of crazy. What I like to do, believe it or not, is go to people's LinkedIn. So at least I know they're professionals of some sort. Or they, because Facebook could be kind of deceiving. But at least on LinkedIn, that's kind of like a tool. At least you know they
They exist.
and also exactly. And if they try to do something stupid, you know their company, right?
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of how I like do the vetting process.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You were featured in Hodinky.
Yes.
They did a 4+1 story
Yep.
with you, right? And for those that, if you just so happen not to be, versed in who Hodinky is, anytime someone is featured in Hodinky, that person, it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. It feels nice to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
Two
for your
Hodinky
passion.
alum.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Both of us actually. Yeah. I followed your footsteps. Yeah.
Like, listen, let's not like be modest about this.
right.
Like, featuring in Hodinky is a big deal.
No, but it is. It feels really nice, to be acknowledged for, doing something positive, like doesn't hurt anybody. No.
Yes.
Expressing your passion. And you invest a lot in these pieces. It's okay to show it off. And what better platform
Of course.
than Hodinky, right? What was that like for you?
It was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it was. I didn't expect it. And it just, it caught me off guard. But, obviously when when I talked to the journalist and told her my story and, her questions were so thoughtful and, it was really just, it
And
was
I think
an incredible
you were
experience.
interviewed by Nora, right?
No, not Nora.
It wasn't Nora. Who was it?
No, it was Sarah.
Sarah. Okay,
Correct,
cool.
yeah. So Sarah did my interview. And it was just, it was an amazing experience. Like you said, it was something that, like, especially if you're a collector or you're involved in a community, to be recognized for all this like time that you spend and money, right?
Yeah.
That you spent, kind of building something. It's rewarding. It feels nice.
What did your kids think?
I thought it was cool. I don't know if they know what Hodinky is yet, really. But they saw me
They're like,
on
Dad's famous.
Yeah, like they saw me on like the what do you call it, the article, and it was cool. And it was actually, the pictures were taken at home. So
Wow.
they're like, oh, it's our couch.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
You did yours at home too, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, they came to my house, and it was really Tiffany Wade came over,
Yes.
and we took some shots, and then I did an interview with Nora later.
Yeah, we had Rita Harper as my photographer. She was fantastic.
Yeah, they have some of the best photographers
They do.
in the game.
They're amazing.
They've been doing it so long now, and they really, we don't talk about them often on the podcast. Maybe we should, but the reason why it is a big deal for those that may or may not realize is because, in part, they're the reason why we're here.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, true.
They created the landscape
They did.
for us, and they're the big reason why we're all thriving. They really fostered the culture. This has been amazing catching up with you. I had a really good time speaking with you. I'm been a long admirer of what you've been doing.
Thank you.
With
Likewise.
Atlanta Watch Society. And it was so great. It's funny how like things just accelerate in this community because you guys have done this in 2 years, which is like no time. We started talking online some time ago. We just met in person for the first time, a month ago, 2 months ago?
At the Oris event, yeah.
Yeah, at the Oris event. And then we've done an event together, and we've gotten you on the show. This is just like
amazing.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's funny how life works. But we owe it all to watches. I want to say thank you. I think what you're building is incredible.
Thank you.
What I got to witness last night by attending, I guess, my first official Atlanta Watch Society event was awesome. The people that are coming out, the resources that you're able to put together and use, the guys, shout out to the guys from Watch Your Wrist.
Yes.
They
DJ.
were incredible. DJ Allen was awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
he was great.
His people were great. He brought some heavy hitters.
Yeah.
I think Ronaldo even bought a watch.
Yeah, Ronaldo will watch. I gotta
did.
tell you this: the best swag that I ever got is from those guys.
Yeah, did you get a
The
sweatshirt?
sweatshirts, the
yeah,
t-shirts.
they
I was
came
like,
prepared.
I'm like, hold on, how are you guys able to like give this out for free? I'm like,
that's nice swag.
Everybody
That was
was in the
good.
box, and I
Yeah.
was like, y'all selling this? I'm like, man, y'all pushing merch too? Like, no.
Yeah, that's right. You asked me.
Right?
I'm like, it's free. I'm like, it's free. I didn't say it was swag. I remember that.
I mean, the event was rocking. It was awesome.
good.
We'll share some photos too in this episode and maybe some B-roll. But I mean, from everything and how everyone came out, from the regular members, shout out to Alex and his wife
Yes.
for
Yes.
catering and
And Kanto
providing the
Suites.
food.
Yes.
Kanto Suites, that was fantastic. And then there were a lot of new faces there.
There were.
Too. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of people were just seen online. I was like, man, I've been waiting for something like this.
A lot of guys actually flew in. Some guys
Yeah.
drove.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dave, because Dave is someone that's very, very active on Instagram and, you know, interacts with us. And he's down in Florida, and
Oh, Dave's awesome.
he's
Dave is-
amazing. Like,
such a
and-
gentleman. He's
Yeah,
a
he's
nice guy.
such a gentleman. And
God.
like, he was
Love
like, so I was like walking by, and he's like, Rashawn. And I was like, oh shoot, that's
Dave.
Dave.
That's Dave.
And like, it's so funny how like you meet people via like Instagram or meet them, etc.
Correct,
And
yeah.
then there's such a pleasure when you meet them in person.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, I agree. Yeah, There's no
was-
disappointment, right?
It was
No,
no disappointment. So like, I
Yeah.
definitely have to shout out Dave, because he's awesome,
He's so genuine.
so genuine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a
we
good
had a,
man.
we had a ball last night, man. It was a lot of fun. Atlanta treated us very well.
Yeah.
Appreciate the hospitality. Of
course.
Much appreciative of the partnership.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you know, giving us your platform to use. No, we had a blast. So just want to say thank you again.
Thank you.
And for those out there listening and watching, you know where to find us. You can just visit riskcheckpod.com. You can watch the episode there. We've got all our links if you want to listen. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and maybe one day the metaverse. I don't know, but we still have watch cases left. So if you visit riskcheckpod.com, place an order. We'll ship it right out to you, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Deuces.
Peace.
Sounds good. Peace.